MLow, it's the MLow show. MLow, it's the MLow show. MLow, it's the MLow show. Talking to people about crypto.
GM Mario, and welcome to the MLow show. How are you doing today?
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me. Doing great. Just did a little break on some tweaks. Some new tricks I'm trying to teach Botto. So, yeah, it's kind of big fun now. Especially coding with Claude is so fantastic. It's kind of everything you kind of always put off for, one day I should do this. Now you can just get started, and a few hours later, or even sometimes a few minutes later, you have some working code, and it's doing all the boring stuff. I mean, it's really the future.
100%. I definitely have been experimenting with code as well, and using Claude and ChatGPT and kind of putting them against each other and seeing how they collaborate with each other, and mixing different models has been one of the things that I enjoy more. Before we get started, I think it'd be great if you could give a brief overview of yourself and of Botto. I think that it'd be awesome for the listeners to just get a quick understanding of what you've been building.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's always the question, like, how far back should I go? So I will spare you all the very beginnings. But yeah, so I'm an artist. I've been working kind of with computers all my life, and at some point I even dared to call myself an artist. That was maybe roughly, like, I always mix up the dates. I think the first time I really said I'm an artist was only kind of 16, 17 years ago or so. And before that, I was using other terms like a computational artisan, for example, because it felt like I can't call myself an artist. I mean, I know it's art, but yeah. So anyway, and I have been kind of working with generative art, or what became generative art, for a long time, but kind of with the beginning of deep learning, I totally got into the whole deep learning, AI, art stuff. So yes, you mentioned Botto already. So Botto is, well, I call it my brainchild. So it is an autonomous, decentralized artist, and I call it kind of like an attempt to, if we can create a machine that is accepted, respected, and like a human artist, but it's a machine artist. So that, I and the Botto DAO and the Botto team claim that Botto is an artist, and like every other human artist who can claim that, we have to, like, Botto has to prove, find people who believe that. And over the past 3 years, I would say it has worked. Like, it works. So Botto has found a lot of believers. Botto has several successes along the way. Not sure if you want to go deeper into that later, so I don't want to spoil everything. So yeah, and so yes, I really kind of work kind of like, these days I prefer to call myself an artist because AI is becoming so normal, but some people would say, yes, I'm an AI artist. But then again, the definition of AI artist has also changed kind of quite a lot. So I'm an artist who works with AI. So that's kind of my preferred way of calling it.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely resonate with that. And it's funny, I've been a digital artist since way before I've been using AI, mostly as a photographer, and then using digital darkroom to manipulate photographs. So when I got introduced to AI, it was just a natural transition from that into manipulating images using deep learning, and also different tools that are available. And one question I had for you about Botto was, how close to it being truly autonomous is Botto?
Well, I mean, that comes to the question, what is truly autonomous? So, maybe let me quickly explain how Botto works, or rather what Botto is, because Botto is, I would say, an inverse cyborg, because it contains, it's 3 elements that make Botto. There is Botto, the AI, kind of, it's the various text-to-image generators, text generators, all these it's kind of like a black box running on several servers, which constantly produces right now kind of images. We call them fragments. At the same time, there is a DAO, the Botto DAO, which consists of humans, and the DAO is voting on the fragments that Botto selects. So every week, Botto selects 350 from a growing kind of pile of, which is, I think, at the moment, somewhere between 3 and 4 million. So it sits like it, because it constantly produces, but we never see them. So it makes a selection every week and presents them to the DAO, and the DAO is voting on these, saying like, oh, I love this, this is art, or I like this, it's a dog on it. We don't know, like everybody has their own way. And these votes go back and feed what we call the taste model. So it's a model that's, again, on the AI server, which tries to learn what the DAO likes and doesn't like. So in the next week, the selection is closer to kind of what's popular. And well, at the same time, kind of once a week, a week is a round, the top voted fragment is becoming Botto's art. So this is actually, the fragments are not Botto's art yet, like they are proto art. But this one piece gets minted on super rare and put up for auction. If that sells, then 50% of the proceeds are distributed among all the voters in the DAO who did the work, and 50% is being added to the treasury to keep the servers running, to pay for expenses, and there is a human core team, of course, like that does development and community management, actually. So there is a human element in there, which actually is very interesting, and so it is important, because Botto, you could say, like, of course, it could just pick whatever it wants from like from the results. But if you start from random, what would be the decision processes that like make the machine decide this is my art and this is not? And this is why from the beginning on, it was kind of this human AI hybrid. But at the same time, the whole thing becomes almost like another entity, because like there's not a single human who can control anything. And of course, the AI, especially like what the artistic output is, completely separated from human input, except for this indirect link through the votes. So then, of course, the AI like has to, like a human artist, evolve with the real world, like changes in the world. And as we've seen in the past 3 years, like 3 years since Botto exists, AI has exploded. When Botto started, there wasn't even diffusion models yet. It started with VQGAN and CLIP. So they're like halfway in the first, like half a year later, the first diffusion models came out. And so unfortunately, it gets too complicated, but so Botto also operates in periods, and the first period was defined to be a year long, which the DAO then realized relatively quickly that that's way too long for an AI to adapt, because a new period also means that new models can be added to Botto's repertoire and other changes can be made. So, and that's why then now a period is 3 months long. So it's like the seasons. So there are 4 periods a year, and every period kind of allows Botto to get upgraded, you could say. And that's where, and to answer your question, I come and kind of integrate something like whatever, a Stable Diffusion 3.0, and it's open source, which is good because Botto only uses open source models, and then I put it in. But of course, now pretty recent, right? Like let's say half a year maybe, or even less. We are seeing that now we can control computers with LLMs. So now comes the point where actually, and it is something that I kind of foreseen, and it's part of the thing, that Botto will be able to upgrade itself in certain aspects, saying like it realizes there is a new model, this is open source, and then it will start up a test server, kind of a sandbox thing, and see if it can install this model and run it. And if it can run it, then it will just integrate it. But these are the steps towards more autonomy. So at the moment, there's a it's kind of not like maybe some of these new AI agent where you say, oh, they are doing everything by themselves, which is always kind of, Botto was always transparent there. At every step of kind of technological progress, there are things that Botto will do on top of what it's doing, but there are a lot of things that in a real working kind of, in a real working project that is not kind of, you cannot responsibly leave to an LLM or something, because like you don't want to risk that, like, okay, Botto, yeah, like distribute the whatever, the rewards of everyone like through your wallet, and then something goes wrong, and then whatever it sends the whole wallet contents to, well, some burns it, all right. So there are certain levels of trust. I see it really like a child, where kind of initially it's kind of small, and well, you take it to school or take it to the bus, but then maybe kind of a few days later or a few months later, you give it more freedom and self-responsibility. And that's what happens with Botto. So step by step, more and more things are being allowed. The thing is, initially I thought like, okay, maybe at some point we don't need the DAO anymore and the humans, but it turned out that the DAO and this human-machine interaction is one of the more interesting aspects of the whole Botto. So it will probably never go away. So there will always be this hybrid between kind of an AI black box that you communicate with and a kind of democratic kind of semi-anonymous entity consisting of humans that changes over time, and these two are plugged together and are the artist.
Well, so you would include the community in the art, in what you would define as the artist.
Yeah, so definitely. No, it's not just like, it's not just the whatever the AWS server with models. No, it's actually the whole construct. And the third component I forgot to mention is, of course, the economy that is part of it, which is the Botto token, which is also kind of, I call it the lifeblood. For me, these three elements are really like almost like a trinity. So you have the heart, the brain, and the spirit or something. And somehow like maybe the brain in this case is the AI, and the heart is the humans, and the spirit is the token that flows through the whole system. Not sure, but yeah, I like this kind of trinity idea. And yeah, that whole construct is the artist. And it's also maybe a provocation to say, yeah, this is the artist, and this is exactly like what Botto tries to find people like to believe that. Yeah, everybody's free to say, no, that's not art, but that's exactly the point.
So I can say I'm a Botto artist?
Well, you are Botto, you could say, or I'm part of Botto. I don't know, like, yeah, but so yeah, you are part of a collective or kind of a Borg. I don't know, like, you know, like from what is Star Trek. So yeah, there's this, and yeah, the boundaries are fluid, and so yeah. And that's the whole thing. We find out kind of like it's constantly evolving and changing its shape. I mean, there's core ideas and almost like core commandments that, well, when I set out for, like when I conceptualized Botto, were quite sure. So one, for example, is Botto gets never prompted directly, because it's not a slave and it's not kind of a tool. Because that's, I mean, the thing is, like, you can go to a website there and just enter a prompt and then like pay for it or get it free and say, okay, what's the difference, right? Like, okay, Botto does the same. But yeah, it's the typical question, like, what makes an artist, or when does something become art? And so, well, this is one of those ideas that Botto is, that's one of the agencies or where Botto's autonomy is being respected.
So how are new pieces created, or new fragments created, before they become pieces?
Yeah. So that's kind of based on my theory, kind of that you have to use like the most efficient search is random search. So Botto has prompt generators that just produce random prompts, and it does a shotgun approach, which also means like from those, I haven't done the last count, but let's say it's probably almost 4 million. Like probably half of them are absolute crap. So I don't know. And so, but the other thing is, they might look really bad, or like nobody might like them now, but maybe, who knows, we are not ready yet. And in 5 years, Botto selects a fragment it has created today, and everybody will love it. But today so the process really random. So, and then only the selection, the curation that Botto also does, that is non-random. That is based on feature vectors and like a total ensemble of feature vectors, and the taste model, which kind of tries to map kind of the known, kind of like from coming back from the votes, it gets the feedback, okay, this portrait was really kind of popular. And so this is kind of category A, you could say, and this noisy thing really nobody liked, so this is category D. And so it puts all these into buckets, and then tries to predict kind of which of the fragments that nobody has seen yet, together with there's another factor, it's the period theme. Every period has a title and kind of some inspirational lines that Botto wrote, like how does this fragment kind of fit in the theme of the period, as well as will be like, is probably liked by everybody. And that's the selection process. And so
That's super interesting. Do you have a favorite piece that might have not been selected by the DAO?
Oh, tons of them. No, that happens all the time. I mean, usually I prefer kind of the more kind of gory, edgy ones, or I mean, I specifically like always the ones that look different to what Botto has already done. And these are often kind of weird. I'm not so much into the pretty kind of portraits of whatever another. Oh god, I mean, that's the thing, there's a whole variety. Oh, I should also explain, there's one other step in the selection. So you could say kind of once a week it kind of extracts, let's say, a few thousand fragments that are potentially good, and then it kind of clusters them based on their feature vectors, so that the selection it makes, it's not all just looking the same. So let's say the last winner was whatever, what was the last winner? Oh, it was this photographic piece, right? It looks like, then, well, the danger, what could happen if you just go for kind of the top voted stuff, then over time, Botto will just return kind of all the same. So it will be all photography, or it will all be something like surrealist compositions. And that's why it splits it up by feature vector distances and clusters, and selects kind of a whole range of them, which keeps the selection always kind of diverse, and allows for also things that might not really be in the, like, what the Botto DAO knows so far. Kind of, it's kind of like a provocation almost, like saying like, oh, but like, look here. So it leaves room that new things can happen. And so, yeah, generally I like kind of weird stuff, or, well, something that falls out of the normal distribution, I would say. But I don't play favorites, so I don't know. I mean, you can check in the super rare kind of auction history. There, I think, 3 or 4 where I tried bidding on, but that's the problem. I always get outbid. There's a certain budget I have, because of course I don't get the money that Botto makes. I mean, I'm a DAO member, so I get my share from voting, but there's no kind of kickback for me because I'm Botto's father. That's part of the concept.
So I guess how do you benefit from being the creator of Botto? Obviously, that's not the intention, but I'm just curious, since you mentioned that.
I mean, of course, I have quite a bit of Botto. So so as a founding kind of like member in the beginning, there was an airdrop, and of course I have something there, and I did never sell it. So that's kind of one way. At the same time, I mean, that's maybe also one of the issues. Botto doesn't have a face. Botto doesn't have a voice, deliberately. So well, you come and ask me, you don't ask Botto, right? So but at the same time, it's not like Botto is not my only thing, right? That's the nice thing. It's not like right now, because I find it enjoyable and there are so many things happening, I'm actually working for Botto. And actually I get paid for that. So if I do work, I get actually kind of like there are certain kind of contributor like budgets where people who help the development of Botto get paid by Botto. So that's one of the things. But yeah, I have plenty of other things going on. So it's not that I have to live from Botto. So, but yeah, and of course I get to travel. I don't know, like what was it, like 2 weeks ago? Botto got me to New York, where it had the big kind of solo show and auction at Sotheby's. So, and Botto doesn't eat, so I got the dinner, and so yeah, there are like benefits with it.
So you mentioned Sotheby's, and I think it's a good time to talk about that. First off, huge congratulations on all the success and being able to be auctioned at Sotheby's. I understand this is not your first time for your own personal art, but for Botto, it was their debut at Sotheby's, and I thought that was really interesting to have an autonomous entity selling its art at an auction house like Sotheby's. How was that experience?
Oh, it was of course great. I mean, one thing I should mention, and that's kind of very interesting. I totally did not feel that it was my show at all, right? This was like Botto, and I was just there, but it wasn't like it was really not my art being kind of on auction, but it was Botto's art. So, and then that's exactly how I wanted. So, I mean, of course. Kind of getting invited to like even like at such a young age, you could say. I mean, Botto is 3 years old. Like that doesn't happen to a lot of human artists. So it's a great honor. It's for me, it feels like another step on the ladder that Botto wants to climb, kind of getting the not only acceptance within the, let's say, the crypto-affine community, but really kind of break into kind of actual contemporary art circles, and in the conversation that's happened there, getting taken serious. And that's kind of, for me, it's part of being taken serious as an artist, that Sotheby's kind of thought, let's like this sounds like something they want to have associated with their name, and of course the other way around as well. And so it was really exciting. I mean, I'm not sure if you have been there in New York, their kind of building. It's huge. Oh, really nice coincidence. At the same time, they had a Harold Cohen show with Aaron. So that was really nice to see, kind of like on the advertising thing, like Botto switch with Harold Cohen. So yeah, really great company. And there was a lot of interest from the media and visitors. So I mean, was a very short trip, and then of course in the end, an auction for an artist is also kind of, it's first of all, of course, it's exciting, but at the same time it's also super terrifying, because if an auction goes wrong, or kind of you stay below expectations, like or I mean, just so that's kind of can hurt your long-term perspective a lot. So you don't want to kind of appear like oh, it's over or so, right? And I mean, kind of like, it didn't really happen to me, but you maybe still remember kind of my personal experience back in the early days. So we all remember kind of that big breakthrough for when AI art made it into the public mind, which was through that obvious auction. I think, was it 2018, where at Christie's. And well, I had my Sotheby's auction with Memories of Passers-by, what was it, like half a year later or something like that? And of course, then like a lot of people said, oh, when Mario doesn't like, oh, now like they sold for 400,000, so yours must go for 1 million, or like totally weird expectations. And then in the end, the piece only, I mean, that's the thing. What was it? Not quite sure. Was it 80, like in total $80,000 or 60,000 pounds or something, which was at the top of the expected thing. But of course, everybody felt like, oh, what a disappointment. And I said, like, really? I mean, so hello, this is the most expensive piece of art I have sold so far. But it's kind of unfair, because it really felt like this expectation so high, like it wasn't a total win there. But I mean, in hindsight, it's still kind of, well, I love the piece. It is kind of very much associated with me. So I think it was a good thing to do, but it is super, super frightening. So back to Botto, I think it was great that kind of I believe all but one actually kind of sold and over the expected price. And so yeah, it was a really great success.
Yeah, huge congratulations again. Another question I had was, how does Botto basically advance its AI tooling? And you were saying that there are contributors. I'm wondering also if Botto might expand to like AI video or other things like audio as well.
All these are open. I don't know if so generally at the moment, Botto's main core competence, I would say, is creating still images. And for that, as I already said, like it's using kind of open source models only. So at the moment, it does not use any kind of APIs where Botto has to pay for, because as you can see, like Botto has to be economical in using its resources. And since due to the random prompting, there's a lot of things that might not be good. It would be really it would spend a lot of money for if it were using whatever DALL-E or something for requests that might never be used. So then the other rule is open source models should not be too specialized. So that's why it only uses really kind of the large ones and not kind of very kind of particular ones. That's more of, again, the theory that we don't know what's good yet. So why try to force it too much? So it should find things that we might not even know we like. The benefit of doing images is, first of all, it is very computationally fast to produce them. It is at the same time also rather quick to make a judgment on them, because all you have to see it and then you click on it or you pull the slider, and that way you can, like I said before, there are 350 new fragments every week, but there is this rotating voting pool that during a period which contains 1,050 fragments. So imagine, okay, so theoretically you should go through over 1,000 fragments and pick the best ones. And with images, theoretically you can do that in I don't know, in 1 or 2 hours. Now imagine you have to do that with sound or video. Problem with time-based media is you have to take the time to actually look through this piece or listen to this. And so, yes, I mean, I like the idea that Botto plays around with it, but at the moment, it feels like, I mean, people in the DAO, like you, have been asking, oh, when does Botto do videos? And first, it is computationally much more expensive. It takes much longer to create a video than an image. So, and again, Botto has to kind of be careful with what it spends, because it can only spend what it earns. And so let's say, okay, now start a video server which kind of needs much bigger GPUs to be effective. So that's another $10,000 every month that Botto just for something experimental. So I would say yes, it will come, but if Botto does video, probably it should do something that it contains also proper narrative. And I believe so, not just kind of, oh, just make this move. Yes, Botto could probably very easily kind of take whatever fragment it had created and make it move. But actually some people in the DAO have done that as kind of fan art. So it feels more like a gimmick, not really like something that is necessary. Same with sound. Yeah, but there are some experiments, so there's room for experimentation. But what I wanted to say, actually, one thing that it was already public was a prototype that Botto was doing this spring. I think and Botto was actually writing code to produce generative art. So it was actually creating P5.js code. And there was this whole kind of, again, like a voting process. The whole thing was set up as an evolutionary system or evolutionary process. So Botto created, let's say, 200 proposals for generative art sketches. And then the DAO members were voting on them. The new thing was people could also give constructive feedback in the, like, by actually saying like, oh, this is great, but it's way too fast. Or, oh, could you do this, whatever, in red instead of white or something? And then every week, Botto would take that feedback and create new sketches and variations of the sketches and build kind of the next version. So there were all these kind of like, there were mutations where kind of it would take existing code and make some random changes. It would make a new version based on the comment. It would even kind of make fusions. Like there were two very good, like highly voted ones. You could say like, okay, this was great. It would try to create a new one, which took, well, it was in its own decision, like kind of take some parts of that code and some parts of this code and create a new Frankenstein code. And this will continue. So it was kind of a test where nothing was minted. It was really to find out, is it actually possible to do this? Do the sketches that come out, can they be measured against what humans code? And like, are there any problems with it? And so now there will be kind of a new iteration of that coming, which will be kind of interesting. But yeah, and that will probably also be something which then Botto can call its art. So yeah, and Botto has also done collaborations, right? Like, which is kind of also again tricky, kind of with like the autonomy. So has done kind of, we have invited artists that can then work with Botto's material, and that's then called a collaboration. Also,
I'd love to collaborate with Botto whenever Botto's ready.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. Then, and of course, then right now, well, at the moment, I think until now, Botto, like when it comes to text generation, which it constantly does, right? It generates the titles for its works. It generates descriptions. Botto has given interviews in text form with with journalists. So it has always been using kind of public models like GPT-4 or GPT-3, Claude, with a very complex prompt that contains its whole biography. And now Ross Goodwin, I don't know if you remember or know him, like very well known. He actually did, I think, the first script like that was like also in the beginning, like he had an AI generate a movie script that was then actually produced kind of for a short film. And so he's an expert in LLMs, and I call him a kind of a tutor in residence. So not artist in residence, but so he's currently working on giving Botto kind of solid art history kind of backgrounds, his own like way of speaking and everything. So, and that will then very soon be kind of leading to some readable results.
Sounds super, super interesting. Maybe also I'll send you a few questions after that you can feed to Botto.
Yeah, of course. No, totally. Yeah.
One other question I had with regards to ethics of AI art, I know that like in the past, there definitely have been like in general, people on both sides saying like art that models that are trained on other artists' art aren't necessarily ethical. I wouldn't agree with that necessarily. I also understand how like if you're training something on open source material, that's CCO, etc., and there are millions of images that it's being trained on, then like it's not necessarily one artist's work, it's a lot of artists' work. And I think that's a little bit different because that's a whole data set. So anyways, I guess my question is regarding originality and the potential for AI to replicate or appropriate existing works. I guess what's your stance on these issues, and how does your work with Botto navigate these ethical waters?
Well, my stand is not very popular among probably non-AI artists. So, no, so I guess. Well, of course, like most importantly, plagiarism is bad. So yeah, so definitely. So people should not deliberately plagiarize, and at the same time, I also think it does not need any consent for humans and not for machines to train yourself or a machine on. So that's kind of I'm very clear on that, because I think that's, for me, it's almost like a kind of a unwritten law, how civilization works. Kind of, we kind of are here because people before us shared their knowledge, kind of shared their art, and other people were able to build on top of that, to learn from it, and and kind of, yeah, make our knowledge, our culture grow. And so one other thing I believe, kind of well, let's put it like this. Well, it's not really an ethical thing. It's more like a technical thing. Oh no, like a practical thing. I believe, or I mean, I can see that already, that LLMs, also kind of image models, are more and more replacing search engines. So these things are becoming the new search. And I think if you want to stay relevant or you have to be recognized by these models. You have to be in there, because if you're not, you do not exist anymore. At the same time, you also do not make a mark in them anymore, saying, I was here before. And a model can only know that, kind of like, how close it is to somebody else's art or somebody's work if it has seen it, and if it associates it with somebody's name. And then comes the ethical decision to say, am I too close to this? Am I taking too many kind of, let's say, weights or kind of influences, or is this still within reason? Because actually this field is so tight that, like, just because this looks like a cat, like, nobody owns the cat, or what, like, so, because I find it very, very hard to kind of, like, you cannot really make a hard line between, oh, this is too much inspiration, or this is taken too much kind of from this or not. I mean, except if you make an exact copy, or there are some very, very distinctive features that everybody recognizes. But in general, I always find it quite fascinating how kind of some people say, oh, this is, I mean, especially if you are not in a certain field, right? If you're not familiar with it, you have more of a broad view of what it entails. And those who are, like, I don't know, for example, I'm totally not into the whole manga anime stuff. So for me, that all looks the same. But apparently, I mean, obviously, there are very, very kind of distinctive marks or kind of characters that, like, probably I wouldn't recognize. Like, I would see two and say, okay, that's done by the same artist, and that's the same thing. So a lot of things need a very special domain knowledge even to recognize that it's a distinctive style or not. And so who will judge all this? Like, who will declare this is plagiarism or not? And that's my second problem. I hate bureaucracy, and all these kind of movements now to kind of, like, say, oh, but you have to register here, or kind of put your stuff into our system and we will take care that your copyright is protected. In the end, will just lead to this gigantic balloon of bureaucracy where only one entity actually earns money that is kind of, like, worth even looking at, and that's the entity that handles these kind of middleman process. So the artists, as usual, will kind of just get some peanuts out, like, oh yeah, here's your yearly allowance, and it's like $5. But the rest is, unfortunately, for the whole complex process of actually figuring out kind of how much of your work was used by this model or something, or like all this licensing. And I hate these parts. I think it's there are other ways of hopefully going about it, and maybe this whole kind of digital feudalism that people want to like, yeah, but like that's kind of what people would love to have, right? Like being a landlord of your little latent space domain and charge everybody who kind of like goes by. And unfortunately, there are already a lot of other landlords in that space, namely labels and publishers and people who sit on perhaps most of the intellectual property of the world today. So the illusion that some artists will still get a little piece of that cake is, I believe, kind of, yeah, it's a fantasy. I mean, yes, it's a wonderful world, but in practice, the only people who will earn really from this is those who are already doing it. So I guess then there are other ways, like this is a different time, right? It's attention economy. So you have to kind of get your name and your work out there. And once that happens, the money comes somehow. No, it's really, I mean, you get commissions or you get paid for a speaking gig, or like, I don't know, you become like, some people like to do YouTube stuff or podcasts. I mean, there's all these different ways, but just for selling an image or charging somebody, I don't think it's practically works. That's my take.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think also, like, for me, I started off not even selling my work. I was just creating art for the sake of creating art. So it just came, like, when NFTs, I guess, came to the forefront, it made sense to me because I was able to sell digital art natively in a digital art format. I think with regards to IP and all of these different like disagreements, etc., it's very hard to navigate in a place where like code is law and it's pretty lawless in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, there are protocols like Story Protocol that's trying to build like an IP sort of L2 situation. I don't know how that's going to turn out. I hope that they do well with that, but in general, like it's very complicated, and I don't know.
Let me chime in just for a second. So I've been working with image classifiers and image similarity since kind of like, like since they became kind of possible. So these models get better, but even if you have the best model that can compare the distance from one image to another, it is not like it. In the end, like it's a decision process. It is not that it's not kind of a clear cut where you say this is plagiarism and this is not. And especially like if you go purely by images, there can be fair use. So it might be that actually it's totally fair to use that image. So I do not actually see how people want to accomplish this. And then like even more if it's totally automated or something. It is, I don't think it will work. Except if you have a human kind of almost like a court where then like somebody holds it, and it's really like in a court where say that somebody in the end like puts the hammer down and says you win or you lose. But and that's a human kind of like subjective almost decision.
Yeah, 100%. I'm wondering also with regards to a lot of AI generated art, including Botto's creations, there's elements of randomness or machine driven selection. How do you reconcile that with traditional artistic process where choice and intention play a significant role?
Okay, I mean, I would say it's with AI, but even before AI, it's a different process. I mean, so I see creativity as finding, so it's almost like object trouvé. I think like you find object in latent space and then you make them yours. Maybe you find a good story or you have a theme and then you kind of create a narrative around it. And so, yeah, in the, like if you have something where a human is involved, then of course it's the intentionality is kind of based on the human, the reasons they pick or they decide or how they prompt, and that's it. And I don't care if it's an AI doing it or kind of an ink drop that you randomly drop from a kind of from a letter or something else. For me, it's an instrument that some people know to play better and others kind of just kind of dabble around with. It's coming out of the process of how you use it and why you use it. But yeah, the tool or the instrument you use shouldn't make any difference. I mean, it is kind of now new criteria might coming in, because of course there's this whole notion of effort, and it's too effortless and it's too easy, but it's actually not. I mean, yes, it is easy to make, like, yeah, do a prompt and a second later you get your picture, but this has to kind of stand its ground among the billions of other images other artists or other people are putting out at the same time. So yes, the creation is easy, but it is kind of, you have to find kind of like ways to bring it, to make it interesting, or bring it in front of your audience and find people who find it meaningful or where it speaks to them. And so, and yes, an AI can even help you with that, because some people just want kind of a pretty picture with a explanation that sounds deep, and that's art. That's cool. and if you are one of those and you are successful with this kind of art, then lucky you, congratulations. I don't think, because it's even that process has become so easy, it's also kind of getting overused, right? I mean, so that's the point where kind of where the art happens, is that in this time with these possibilities, you still find something that not everybody else has said that way or expressed that way, or you find a completely different way of using your tools. And so it's not using the tool. I mean, yes, so that's easy. But the hard part is actually kind of turning it into a practice that is not just made for kind of 2 days, or I don't know. Yeah, because then you can do shit coins.
So, I mean, you bring up a very good point. I guess what differentiates good AI art and not great AI art?
Well, I think, well, for me, my personal criterion is always how far is it away from the kind of the Gaussian mean, it's a temporal thing almost. Like right now at this point in this culture, in your audience, like, is this mainstream? Is this something kind of that everybody is this very agreeable, everybody likes it, or is this difficult or kind of confusing, hard to understand, but you see something in it? And that's kind of like, for me, that's my criterion. For others, it's kind of might be something different. But yeah, I always think art is that which at that point might not even be art yet. Which kind of where you claim it's art and you don't find that many people who believe you. But after a while, usually if it's art, if your feeling is right, then people will gather and understand it. And well, then you have become part of the art Borg. And so yeah, the organism that, so that's, I bet, yeah. I mean, you can just go on any kind of NFT platform right now, and it's swamped with pretty pictures, and it's clearly not art. I mean, for some people it is, but at the same time, it creates this wallpaper of pretty stuff, and my eye, I don't want to generalize, just slips off this stuff. It's just surface. There's maybe I'm missing something, because that's the difficult. Maybe behind some of these is actually something that would interest me, maybe in the mechanism or in the story, but unfortunately my time is limited and my patience. So maybe if it's so good, then you have to find a different way to reach me or whoever you think your audience is, to kind of get them to the finer points of what the art is about. But yeah, just making kind of a pastiche of things that look like art, that's what Botto can do. I mean, technically.
You also mentioned before that like fragments aren't Botto's art necessarily. The final pieces that are minted are Botto's art. Is there ever a chance that you might go back and mint early Botto work or something like that?
No, that's kind of like there is a chance that early Botto work gets shown, but nope, that's part again of the process. You have to let go. No, that's exactly the thing. So in a period, I should have the numbers, but so it's 12 weeks times, so I think, am I right, about 7,000 or 8,000 roughly? So in one period, 8,000 fragments are presented, and 12 plus 1 are becoming art. So you have 9% of the work being discarded. And that's the beauty of the process, that you have to let go. And there are beautiful pieces or really interesting pieces in there. They are not gone, right? You can still see them on Botto's page in the gallery, kind of where you can see the discarded ones. But it is actually part of Botto's artistic practice that, and going back into this and saying, oh, now, and who decides that? I mean, the only who could decide is Botto, the AI. I mean, like once it gets voting rights in the DAO, which it doesn't have. And we get back to that beginning. What could be another step of autonomy? Botto doesn't have a right to vote, which is kind of unfair. But at the same time, it is like how I call it, like it's this thing like children also have not the right, like don't have a bank account or are not like they have to get like 18 or 21 or so to vote, and that's why. So, and in that sense, yeah, no, this stuff is gone, and because I mean that's the thing. You have an potentially immortal artist, so why would you go back? I mean, yes, of course, people might be tempted because it's in the history of Botto that especially now the works from the 52 works from the Genesis period, the first year, are really sought after, and unfortunately not a lot of like collectors want to sell their work. And yeah, of course, I mean, but what message would that send? That like, well, okay, sorry, it would not, economically it would not make sense. So you can still see them, and they might be, I mean, I don't know, maybe imagine kind of a book or kind of a special show of the discards. I mean, these things are imaginable, but selling it as a canonical artwork of Botto, nope, not gonna happen.
That's super interesting. But you said there is a chance that Botto itself selects an early fragment that was discarded, or not even.
Well, so no, what Botto does since several periods now is like at the end of a period, it completely autonomously selects one fragment that it mints for itself. So that was kind of a new thing introduced, I think, 2 periods ago. And but that is also not one from the discarded ones. It's one from the big pile. So from the treasure. So no, these ones are gone. I mean, I think, and that's wonderful, right? You see them, and it hurts, and that's kind of, I think that's good. So there are several where sometimes you even like it happens because yes, nobody can always look at all the fragments, and then sometimes something pops up in the discarded ones, and you say, "Why I never saw that one? That's fantastic," but it's gone.
Another question I had is, what changes do you predict or hope to see in the traditional art market because of the technology that you're using in Botto?
Not sure. I mean, it's already changing, right? I mean, galleries are now kind of have, like, certain galleries have accepted NFTs, which is great. And a lot of more and more collectors are actually asking for NFTs. And because it's simply for digital art, it's the only way, in my eyes, that you can kind of own and sell kind of.
I once sold a JPEG to Robness on eBay, but besides that, and I think I DM'd it to him, but besides that.
So do you have a copy of that? Or no. Apart from that,
I agree, though. It without NFTs, it's very tough. I think I was selling prints of my photographs before the days of NFTs, but I owned both the film negatives if I was shooting film, or I owned the actual metadata and
Yeah, but
files
then
were on my
collectors,
computer.
right?
I guess
Collectors come and say, "Oh, can you prove that whatever there's only one negative, or did you destroy them?" And so it's all this kind of, and it's of course it's costly, right? Like, yes, I mean I love prints. Don't get me wrong. I love physical art, but it's kind of when you natively do digital, kind of then it feels more like yeah, kind of a special edition, but the true work is natively kind of a few bytes on a disk or somewhere in the cloud. So but yeah, I mean it's great to see that acceptance is rising. I mean it's still not kind of like it's still not easy, like outside of our kind of digital art, AI art bubble or little planet like sphere, to like there's still a huge part of traditional contemporary art that kind of doesn't even know we exist or doesn't take it serious. But I mean that's the thing. It's a generational thing. It automatically will change because I mean everybody, all the generations that grow up now, this kind of devices and then the internet and everything, that's kind of their native world. And so I think it's logical that kind of what we are doing will just be is totally normal at some point. I mean, it's already, but it will be exotic that kind of like certain forms of art maybe. I don't know. It takes up so much space or but I mean, at the end, I love the physical world, so I don't want a space where it's all just digital. So I don't know. What would I like to change? I mean, we see these typical kind of mechanics of the art world. Wouldn't be nice if they changed. Like, I don't know if you know what. So there's a certain way, kind of like artists can be made successful, and that's kind of almost my little kind of utopia, that kind of these mechanisms wouldn't exist. But I guess I have to stay real, and this will always be like, yeah. So if you, I mean, it's really like shit coins. Artists are like shit coins. Yeah, no, it's really like you want to get in on the floor, like at the creation, ideally, because then you are sitting on a lot of artists, and then make it big, kind of pump it. So at some point, your bags are kind of worth a lot. So, and that's how you make an artist. And not only in crypto, but in other worlds too. And that's kind of like, yeah. So, and it's just a reality. But fortunately, I guess kind of there's still plenty of space for other ways in or other ways to succeed.
Yeah, 100%. Do you have any advice for newer artists that are trying to make it and be successful?
Oh, that's the problem. I mean, every time has different ways of becoming successful, right? So when I started, kind of like depending on what defines start, but let's say with social media, social media was in its baby shoes. So it was much easier to get to a point where you got seen. I think the biggest problem these days is kind of to get noticed at all, right? And I don't know the right techniques or what the right medium is. I mean, these days you have to pick your social media network or kind of. So in the end, I always think what has always worked is connect with your peers, like make friendships, collaborations with those that are at the same stage as you are, and you create your own art movement. You create your own kind of thing, and then you, well, if you are good, then you will be noticed. And at the same time, if one of you gets successful, they can help the others in the door. So I think it's a kind of a nice thing. And I don't. Well, we saw it like with Tezos, right? So that was also kind of like, for me, the most fascinating kind of something developing out of nothing, and suddenly you have a huge community. So it's possible. So you can just you have to have the right momentum, you have to have the right mixture of people, and then you can create something really that's much bigger than yourself. And if you are talented, then you will be noticed. I mean, but yeah, human connections are still kind of the most important way to kind of connect to the others, right? It's this mesh of so you can say I'm great, but if somebody else says you're great, that's worth much more than if you claim it yourself. I mean, it's kind of not it's obvious, right?
Yeah, I guess like other human testimonials and things like that, even if it's
Yeah.
not exactly a testimonial. But
Yeah.
I guess one other question I had is, you've been at this for decades, and looking back at your journey, how has your perception of AI's role in art changed, and what unforeseen developments have surprised you the most?
Oh, I'm really bad at unforeseen developments. I think I always like to be right. Oh God, that sounds arrogant, but yeah, no, I mean, I'm here because I kind of made the right predictions about where things are going. So in that sense, maybe the speed at which things have changed surprised me. I hadn't expected that we get to this point where we are now so quickly. I had maybe thought like maybe in 10 years, like this whole kind of LLM stuff, which are in my eyes kind of have a certain form of intelligence and like more and more autonomy among those tools. So, God, sorry, what was the beginning of the question? Kind of what's like.
How has your perception of AI's role in art changed?
Oh, okay. I mean, let's say, as anybody else, I'm susceptible to Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Like first thinking, whoa, I'm so great. And then you learn, oh, I don't know shit. And then at some point you kind of get kind of comfortable with it. So maybe, of course, initially I was also kind of totally in awe with all those possibilities and the wonderful pictures and just experimenting and playing around with it. And then maybe later come to the question, but what does it all mean? Or so maybe now I'm more in the kind of thinking, yes, I have all these possibilities, but what should I do with it? And actually that's right now exactly a difficult phase because, yeah, I mean, I have Botto now that can do the picture part. So I have to find something new to do. So that's kind of finding my next thing that I'm excited about is I think that is also kind of like, yeah. So that's what you learn, right? So the most exciting thing can never stay as exciting as it was the first time. That's kind of, and that's the same with AI. So it's becoming normal, and normal, yeah, it's great, it's useful, and occasionally little kind of things come along. So the thing that excites me right now the most is Claude computer use. I keep babbling about it. The other thing that excited me, so actually this year was good. I had two big excitement phases. So first was Comfy UI, and now Claude computer use. So these are two great things. Comfy UI, because I think it's amazing. You have open source, you have community. It totally reminded me of the early Flash days when everybody just threw their knowledge together and their tools and created weird and stuff, but that also did something productive. So I mean, I like the open source spirit. So, and I hope kind of like that this will prevail, kind of, because I mean, that's kind of fear, right? Like all these movements to kind of almost criminalize open source, and especially open source AI models. I find that, of course, absolutely terrible, and hope it never happens. But at the same time, it's my hope, because really everything that we have now is a lot of this kind of, especially AI, is thanks to open source, because people sharing their knowledge freely without kind of asking for credit, or just because they want to see kind of like what other people are doing and how other people can improve it. And I like that spirit.
Yeah, 100%. My last question is, what are your aspirations outside of Botto, and what do you think that your next project is, or is Botto, besides being your lifelong project, going to be your sole focus?
Oh, no. And Botto is never my sole focus. I mean, it is definitely always present, but most of the time I'm working on other things. I mean, I have some things in the pipeline that I can't talk about. So for next year, I'm hoping something, again, kind of crypto, kind of real life installation, blah. But yeah, I can't talk about that because it's really not even kind of like financed yet. So, I mean, my aspirations right now is kind of trying to kind of build my own, like, I hope that I get to the point where I just have to tell the machine, oh, I want to play with this idea and build it for me and build me, like, so it's almost like not Botto 2, because this thing is just my private assist. So at the moment I'm working on building my super intelligent assistant, not an assistant which can do a lot of things, and it's super fascinating because it's super hard. So yeah, you learn so much. So my aspirations is to have as much time to experiment as possible, and hopefully have one or two more good ideas. That's the thing. So otherwise, I also I do not have to be kind of present all the time. I think that's the thing. Like, I think you should also be comfortable that for half a year you don't have a new work, but you do, like, it's like the algorithm, the social media algorithm forces you have to constantly say something, you have to contribute something, because otherwise you get irrelevant. And that's kind of like, I don't like that approach. I mean, if I have something to say or a stupid idea, I share it, but I don't have a schedule in front of me saying, oh yeah, it's kind of like 5 p.m. you have to do your engagement tweet now. I hate that, and I hope that goes away. But I mean, that would be my hope, that these damn algorithms get kind of like either somebody comes up with a true alternative to Twitter, like that is kind of open and can be, and that is actually alive and not just like, oh, let's go and then we come back. So, and then you have full control over. That's what I want. I want full control over my social channels. Kind of, I want to filter what I see and what I don't see. And I want to train my own AI in kind of deciding what's interesting for me and what's not. So maybe that's a project I will be working on. It's become feasible.
Thank you so much for meeting with me today.
MLow, it's the MLow show. MLow, it's the MLow show. MLow, it's the MLow show. Talking to people about crypto.